to lots of different games, but also this idea that these companies, these firms want broader, deeper, more meaningful, and ultimately more profitable relationships with their customers. And so if you could give them another reason to hit the app or hit the website, I mean, I don't know if anybody actually like calls their broker anymore, but to extend and deepen that relationship, it would make sense.
Yeah, and a way to just apply some of the technology they already have to another kind of market. It doesn't have to go gangbusters, but it could just be another little way to eke out some more revenue for them.
Which sort of takes us back to NASDAQ and the conversation that we had with Adina Friedman when she was our guest on Business Week Talks. I mean, she talked about this because, to your exact point, Annie, is this idea of like, look, we got this technology. Like, we know how this works. This is ultimately a market. This is technology that we have that maybe no one else does. We're global. So
why not
just
do
a lot of upside here. There's no reason not to do it.
Yeah. And the exchange space is interesting too, because that's a place where you've seen the revenue that you can earn from just trading operations shrinking in the very developed stock market. So I think that's part of the reason that NASDAQ has looked for how else can we apply our technology.
And that's Annie Massa, a look into Wall Street, maybe from a little bit of a different lens, a callback definitely to a conversation we had a little earlier this year with the CEO of NASDAQ.
And we should note, Interactive Brokers is a sponsor of Bloomberg Radio. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, Warby Parker tries to expand the company's vision, going from eyeglasses to contacts.
I see what you did there. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constant. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks gave ground in an abbreviated session. The Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbled 113. The S&P 500 fell 13. The Nasdaq Composite lost 40. Fiat Chrysler and the UAW reportedly are close to a deal on a new contract. Sources say the automaker will match the $9,000 signing bonuses that Ford agreed to pay senior workers and won't close any assembly plants during the life of the contract. Kohl's is cleaning up this Black Friday, in a manner of speaking. CEO Michelle Gass says robot vacuums are among shoppers' most sought-after items. Other popular purchases include beauty products, bedding, pillows, and electronics like the Nintendo Switch. Oil closed sharply lower amid signals that OPEC and its allies are not inclined to further reduce output when they meet next week. Crude finished at $55.17 a barrel to close out their worst week since early October. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like 4 reels. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
Going, gone. Some things just don't hang around, like a great deal in Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Right now you can get the Samsung Galaxy S10 for just $29.99 a month. But this deal ends Sunday 1st of December. Catch it before it's gone. Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £35.99, now £29.99. Offer ends 1st of December. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status. Phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Drive into the in-laws' house for Thanksgiving? Having a long airport layover on your way home? Or maybe you're camping out on Black Friday in quest of the deal of the season. Whatever the case, ease the pain and make it a long weekend to remember with TuneIn. And for those basting the turkey at home, we've got great cooking podcasts for prepping the perfect turkey.
I have water with unflavored powdered gelatin, bun pan.
At home or on the move, soundtrack your Thanksgiving with TuneIn.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
Its eyeglass frames are everywhere. Now it wants to take that success and apply it to contacts.
We're talking about Warby Parker. I have the glasses. I'm not wearing them. Yes. Austin Carr has the glasses. He is wearing them.
I am wearing them.
He went deep into this company. It's a fascinating story because we talked with Joel Weber, the editor of Business Week, about this. This is in part a strategy story in a lot of ways because this was a company that launched a whole line of imitators in various businesses. Tell us where Warby is right now.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, this was the company that sparked this, crazy trend of what we call direct-to-consumer companies. Sort of if you have Allbirds or Casper mattresses or want to order a razor online or underwear or short shorts, what have you, there's a zillion unicorns out there that have built a huge brand off of being the Warby Parker of X. And the big question for Warby Parker, which has a $1 billion plus valuation itself, was do they want to become a platform, a retail platform, and sort of, instead of just selling $95 glasses like the ones I'm wearing, do they want to launch into all these other verticals or double down on vision care?
I'm going to make you take a step back. I'm going to assume we all know what this company is, but just remind us about what they do, because they really have upended the way you sell things.
Totally. I mean, just a few years ago, we were talking about the retail apocalypse, and in many ways, we're still talking about this is the one company that sort of bucked that trend. They, back in 2010, Neil Blumenthal and Dave Gilboa came up with this idea to disrupt Luxottica, which was this massive conglomerate in the eyewear space that was sort of a monopoly, a lot of analysts think, when it comes to distribution and licensing.
They own all the eyeglass manufacturers.
Ray-Ban, Sunglass Hut, Pearl Vision, what have you. And they often marked up their frames massive rates. I mean, just if you buy Ray-Bans for a couple $100, they're pretty expensive. With Warby Parker, they had one low price point of $95. It was just very straight for direct-to-consumer marketing, so they sold online, then eventually moved on offline into physical retail. And they've really become known as this sort of bespoke brand that has this end-to-end customer experience that's very seamless. And you've seen a lot of copycats in that trend.
Well, and it is this sort of threading of the needle, as it were, getting toward where it feels like we are, especially high-end consumers who expect high-touch retail, but also the convenience that you get from online. I mean, the process of Warby Parker, it's pretty great.
It's pretty good. I mean, what they became known for was this at-home try-on experience. If you've ever gone to a store and you look in front of that little mirror, it's self-conscious, you feel a little awkward doing that. They send you 5 pairs in the mail, you get to try them on for free, then send them back, and they send the one that you pick once you pay for it. It's a very seamless experience. And if you've been to the stores, especially around in New York, they're beautiful, they're gorgeous, they're very seamless, and it doesn't feel like a stodgy optometry office if you've ever had that experience of being upsold by your doctor.
And you really went right there to one of the tensions of this story, which is, okay, selling a razor online, not that complicated. Selling socks online, not that complicated. But when it comes to your eyes, it is a little more complicated. There's a whole sort of established way that people do this.
Well, if you screw up, you can really screw up somebody's eyes.
Really, there can be infections, there can be eye disease. And so that's a big thing. It's a much harder category to get into, but they think it's an $11 billion market.
The contacts category
and eye exams. That's one of the big things that they have to push into. Because although they've done prescription eyeglasses for a while, for many years, putting something on a piece of plastic, a piece of silicone on the end of your eye, obviously is a little bit more dangerous, especially when you're ordering these things online. They're also part of a big category that Luxottica also owns, which is, they have people that prescribe the contacts. They own iMed, which is the second largest vision insurer in the company. And they've really locked Warby Parker out of that market. You can't buy your glasses in-network through vision insurance. And so they basically said, you know, we're going to do this on our own. Instead of just glasses, we're also going to offer contacts and do the eye exams. They're tripling the number of optometrists they have on staff who are going to basically help you with your insurance and then hopefully, sell you contacts and Warby Parker glasses downstairs.
One of the things you get into, though, Austin, so here they are like looking to go from glasses now to contacts, kind of build out the vertical if you want. But what's interesting is I think the question is, are they expanding too late? Like, are they, here they created this model, and now that they're spreading out, did they just wait too long to do this?
I think that's a fantastic question, especially we note in the story, one of their co-founders, Jeff Rader, actually left in the early days to launch another unicorn, which is Harry's, the Warby Parker of shaving, which has a $1.4 billion valuation, I think. And then a couple of their other executives went on to found Away, which is the Warby Parker of luggage, which again has a $1.4 billion valuation. So it's a really good question whether or not they waited too long. At the same time, they really pitched this idea that they don't want to chase the flash in the pan, different verticals. A lot of the VCs that they were talking with in the early days said, become the next Shoe Dazzle, become the next Groupon. And they said, we're just going to be focused on this one thing. We do it really well, and now we're going to expand a little bit more. And they pitched this as sort of the anti-WeWork. They don't want to be this crazy, massive $100 billion overnight SoftBank investment. They want to be the mature, step-by-step, incremental growth company.
Well, and I feel like that speaks to who these two guys are. You get into it a little bit of kind of how they manage this company, their approach.
They're very, if you spend time with Neil and Dave, they're very precise. They're as precise as the prescription as their glasses. They really have this attention to detail. They're not, the Adam Newman type characters that are just going to sort of brag about, tomorrow we're going to triple the size of this. One of the guys said, we're comfortable launching 33 stores this year, 40 next year, 45 the year after that. This is not, we're going to launch 500 stores tomorrow.
Well, and it's also interesting to think about this business, especially this expansion into contacts and eye exams. And you alluded to this earlier, Austin. This is a people-intensive business. There's, in addition to the manufacturing, they're doing, these are big jobs, a lot of jobs in a lot of ways, and high touch.
It's not, what they've also been pitching is it's not just the in-store experience, but all the under-the-hood refinements. They have an optical lab where they do a lot of their manufacturing in upstate New York that has about 100 jobs. And they're also pushing into telemedicine, which is a massive category that we've seen other eyewear makers move into. And that's basically the process of, can you update your prescription using just your phone and a MacBook? Essentially, you can measure the distance between your laptop and your phone, and you can check your eyesight doing an eye exam at home. Seems risky,
I know,
but that could be the future.
Right.
And if they're pitching it as not a replacement but a complement to eye exams. Some people think it's risky. A lot of optometry community really felt this is a bad move by the industry, but it seems to be where it's headed.
That's Austin Carr. Great dive into Warby Parker, the individuals, the two co-founders behind the company. Their model really impacted the retail industry overall and created so many other companies in other business lines. But what's interesting is, speaking of business lines, Warby Parker now wants to do contacts.
Well, and this decision to go essentially vertical, staying with the eyewear industry when so many people have mimicked their model to get into all sorts of things. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, Porsche racing ahead into 2020.
And now I saw what you did there. This is Bloomberg.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans. When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer. When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
You can't be the...
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
Your old car, your loyal friend, so many memories. It's impossible to leave their side.
Until now, get £5,000 off a selected brand new Citroën when you trade in your old car.
Alors, out with the old, in with the new. Hello Citroën, hello comfort.
The Citroën Swappage. Trade in your old car for a brand new Citroën, including the award-winning SUV range.
Citroën.
Discount on OTR price of selected Citroëns excluding C1. Registered by the 31st of December when trading in a qualifying vehicle. Not in conjunction with other offers. Search Citroën Swappage for full T's and C's.
This week at Tesco, buy 2 items from our chilled party food range, like tempura prawns or mozzarella sticks, and get a third one free. So for every 2 people you invite, you can ask another for free. But who? Linda from Accounts or Julio from Magaluf 2010? Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Cheapest item free, selected stores while stocks last, ends 1st of January.
Drive into the in-laws' house for Thanksgiving? Having a long airport layover on your way home? Or maybe you're camping out on Black Friday in quest of the deal of the season. Whatever the case, ease the pain and make it a long weekend to remember with TuneIn. And for those based in the turkey at home, we've got great cooking podcasts for prepping the perfect turkey.
I have water with unflavored powdered gelatin, bun pan.
At home or on the move, soundtrack your Thanksgiving with TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and flows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
A deadly stabbing attack on London Bridge has been declared an act of terrorism. London Police Commissioner Cressida Dick says 2 people have been killed.
As well as the suspect who was shot dead by police. 2 of those injured in this attack in the London Bridge area have tragically lost their lives.
In the Netherlands, multiple people have been injured in a stabbing incident in a shopping area of The Hague. The White House is debating whether President Trump or a lawyer will appear at an upcoming House impeachment hearing. Correspondent Caitlin Collins.
This is something they were still going through the motions, deciding whether or not they're going to send a White House attorney now that they've been invited to do so, something they were not allowed to do during the last rounds of those impeachment hearings, which is something you heard the White House and the president's Republican allies being highly critical of Democrats for not allowing an attorney in the room.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 113 points. I'm Ann Cates.
And I'm Nancy Lyons from the Bloomberg Newsroom. U.S. stocks dropped from record highs in the wake of lower European and Asian equities, rounding out a lackluster finale to the third straight month of gains for global benchmarks. The S&P, NASDAQ, and Dow all edged lower. Shares of energy and materials companies were the biggest decliners, with overall trading volume about 40% below the 30-day average. From toy stores to electronics outlets, it's the moment retailers have been preparing for all year, and so far it's off with a bang. After weeks of slow and steady buying, consumers could come out in droves this weekend, giving investors a sneak peek at the likely winners and losers of the holiday shopping season. Tom McGee, the president of the International Council of Shopping Centers, thinks retail is poised for a strong holiday season.
It is a big day, and we expect a pretty big holiday season as well. Our forecast is 4.9% growth year over year.
If there's a Star Wars fan on your holiday gift list, this is the sale for you. Sotheby's is holding its second online-only auction dedicated to Star Wars collectibles. It ends December 13th. That's just days before the release of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. The sales include posters, stickers, and action figures from the original trilogy, as well as rare items. Estimated prices range as high as $78,000. Saudi Aramco's initial public offering has drawn total bids of $44 billion so far. In the retail offering, 4.9 million people applied for shares. The Saudi government plans to raise more than $25 billion by selling a 1.5% stake in the oil company. Market pundit Dennis Gartman is halting production of his daily newsletter. He's been producing the Gartman letter for more than 3 decades, but now he says there comes a time when retirement calls. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
Klaus Selmer is back with us, the president and CEO of Porsche Cars North America, back in New York City. Hannah Elliott.
Porsche, Jason.
I know. I corrected myself. Oh, listen. Anyway, great to have you back with us. Last time you were here, we were downstairs with a car. This year, you're here for the Year Ahead event. So let's start there. What is in store for the year ahead in your business?
Oh, it's all about the brand.
Yeah.
In former times, actually products were building the brand, and now you have to define your brand purpose, and then you build the products, which is a huge shift for us in terms of product planning and in terms of communications.
I love what you say about brand purpose, because a big theme of the year ahead this year is all about sustainability and companies thinking about kind of the broader impact that they're having on our world. How does that obviously work into in terms of, I think about, alternatives to carbon-fueled vehicles and so on and so forth. Talk to us about, though, how that plays in with what you're doing.
Well, we're in the first phase, actually, of a transition to battery electric vehicles. 50% of our cars sold in 2025 will have a plug. So it will have either a combustion engine or with a plug-in modules or hybrid or battery electric vehicle. So that transition is taking place as we speak. The first car is out and about. It's the Taycan, and we're pretty happy about the reception here in the United States.
I have to say, I'm very excited. I just had a chance to drive it. Congratulations on that car. I would love to know, why was Porsche the right company to bring out an electric sedan in the performance segment?
We actually had a long discussion when we started looking at the source of business to then launch a battery electric vehicle, whether it should be what everybody looks at, which is SUVs, or whether we should stay closer to our brand heritage and have a fly line that looks more like a 911 or like a real sports car. So we decided at the end of the day, let's not look at the business potential, let's look at the brand. Let's look at what people associate with what Porsche has been known for decades, and that's why the Taycan is actually the right car. It's a bit bigger than the 911, of course, because we need battery size and battery space in order to also fulfill our customers' expectation when it comes to performance, range, charging speed, and so on and so forth.
So, Klaus, when you think about the Porsche customer, how does he or she feel right now about the economy? What are they saying to you about those, sort of how they're feeling, how they're spending as they look ahead to the next year when they come to buy a car?
Well, if you look at our figures, we're in good shape. Even without the Taycan, we're above previous year 6.5%, while the market is slightly down. So I think we've got the right strategy, the right products, the right communications, the right sales force with our U.S. dealers. So we are confident. They are confident buying into the brand, but we're not boiling the ocean here. We're 3 cars out of 1,000 that are sold here in the United States. So we're probably in a spot that we consider being fortunate.
What makes sense for Porsche in terms of luxury brand doing an electric vehicle?
I think if you have the right technology, and if you say this car speaks Porsche, this car is DNA Porsche, and the right technology is there now. We have an 800-volt system with the first manufacturer applying that to a car. We have everything we know about the chassis and the drivetrain embedded in that car. And now, Hannah, you drove it. It behaves like a true sports car. Thumbs up. Thank you for that. So it's the right time. And looking at our order intake, and we're not talking numbers, just before you ask me, our order intake is exceeding our expectations, to put it that way.
All right, so what worries you? Because I do think about how many times we sit around the table here, Klaus, and we're talking about some of the big macro issues, whether it's U.S.-China trade or trade wars in general or a global economic slowdown of some sort.
Interest rates?
Interest rates. Like, what are we missing? What is it that you guys spend a lot of time discussing? Obviously, you want to focus on your brand, getting your message out there, getting a great vehicle out there. But what else?
Well, for us internally, it's customer experience. But let's put that aside. If we look at macroeconomics at this point of time, now our biggest worry, of course, were the tariff discussion. That was something that was hanging like a black cloud above us. Now, it's not gone, the cloud, but it has lightened up a bit. Very recent reports show that I think our messaging has arrived. And I'm not talking just for Porsche. I'm also talking for our mother company, VW. They have just announced an $800 million investment in Chattanooga, creating another 1,000 jobs for battery electric vehicles that will be produced there. We've done our homework as car manufacturers in this wonderful country. We've invested billions, and there are many thousands of people dependent on those cars being produced here and even exported to other countries. So
but that's because it makes business sense, correct?
It completely makes business sense.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, that's a responsibility we are very aware of, and we're living up to it. And I think that has now arrived with the administration. And I just hope that everybody stays calm and believes in free and fair trade.
And that's Klaus Zellmer back with us. He's the president and CEO of Porsche Cars North America, along with Hannah Elliott, our car expert. Love catching up with them. Of course, the last time he came to see us, he brought a car.
We got to sit around, play around with the car. What's interesting too is it's more about electric vehicles and hybrids, but we also talked a little bit more broadly about the infrastructure needed to support all of this. So a great conversation. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, looking into riders' love-hate relationship with Amtrak. That is so true.
And a very tough new CEO. He's cutting costs in the hopes of saving the rails. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks finished a strong week and very strong month on a down note. The Dow lost 112 points, 0.4% to 28,051. The Nasdaq was down 39 points. S&P 500 gave back 12. Shoppers have a lot of questions about gadgets today. Salesforce.com says iPhones, Kindles, and the Nintendo Switch are coming up a lot in social media conversations. That's because people are researching before they buy. And other names that are surfacing: Amazon, Walmart, and Best Buy. Salesforce predicts online spending on Black Friday will reach $7.5 billion, a 16% jump from a year ago. But near Paris, climate demonstrators blocked a shopping mall and gathered in front of Amazon's headquarters to protest what they say is overproduction killing the planet. Workers at Amazon in Germany went on strike for better pay, and some French lawmakers want to ban Black Friday altogether. Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
The world's top business and political leaders prefer to speak to someone who understands them.
There was a lot of talk about the long-standing close relationship between the United States and Australia.
That's David Weston and you.
Could it actually go from, oh my goodness, we're more at risk than we thought, to, oh my goodness, we're more resilient than we thought?
Balance of Power with David Weston.
We're looking right now at the White House.
Weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. Now the news.
A deadly stabbing attack on London Bridge has been declared an act of terrorism. London Police Commissioner Cressida Dick says 2 people have been killed.
As well as the suspect who was shot dead by police. 2 of those injured in this attack in the London Bridge area have tragically lost their lives.
In the Netherlands, multiple people have been injured in a stabbing incident in a shopping area of The Hague. The White House is debating whether President Trump or a lawyer will appear at an upcoming House impeachment hearing. Correspondent Caitlin Collins.
This is something they were still going through the motions, deciding whether or not they're going to send a White House attorney now that they've been invited to do so, something they were not allowed to do during the last rounds of those impeachment hearings, which is something you heard the White House and the president's Republican allies being highly critical of Democrats for not allowing an attorney in the room.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 113 points. I'm Ann Cates.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
So you love it, you hate it, and if you live on the East Coast, you most likely have found yourself on the Northeast Corridor of Amtrak for work or pleasure at some point in time. But, and I didn't know this, Jason, there are so many more routes and thousands of miles more that make up the Amtrak long-distance network.
I'm going to say this is my favorite story of the magazine this week. It's such a great tale. Devin Leonard is here with us. He wrote the story. He was on the trains. He was with the man.
I love that he was on the trains.
In charge of the whole enterprise right now. A plane guy turned train guy, Richard Anderson, running Amtrak. Devin Leonard here with us in New York City. So what was the inspiration for this to begin with?
I think Joel had the idea, but we knew
Joel Weber,
yeah, editor. Joel Weber, excuse me, our beloved editor. but no, we just knew that there was controversy. People were getting upset with this guy. He was a guy from the airline industry, and it seemed as though some people in sort of the Amtrak ecosystem, sort of train ecosystem, were sort of rejecting him. So we wanted to find out what was going on.
Well, the magazine has done stories on the Northeast Corridor, right, and the problems and the infrastructure problems.
Penn Station,
yeah, exactly. And that's actually a profitable part of the business, of the Amtrak business, but you went much more broader out into the country.
Yeah, I took the Crescent down to New Orleans.
What is the Crescent?
That's a train that leaves daily from Penn Station, and it leaves in the afternoon. It's supposed to arrive, in the evening in New Orleans the next day, but it rarely arrives on time. I think about 3/4 of the time, about 3/4 of the time it's late, often 2 hours late. And I wrote it, and it was late, but it was kind of a wild experience. And I talked to all kinds of interesting people and why they took the train, and it was pretty cool. So.
And it's a microcosm in some ways because you go through big cities. You sort of leave the Northeast Corridor that Carol was talking about, and you go all the way to New Orleans through Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and into Louisiana. And as you say, there are different people who have sort of different relationships with Amtrak. What did you learn?
Well, I think the biggest thing, Jason, is that, we all think of, I guess we just think of Amtrak as, they own the trains and they own the tracks and end of story. But that's not the reality. The reality is that they own most of the Northeast Corridor from Boston to Washington. Throughout the rest of the country, they're running pretty much on freight railroad tracks. And they have a very sort of difficult relationship with the freight railroads. And the freight railroads are supposed to give them preference, pull over to the side, let Amtrak trains pass, but that's not what happens most of the time, and it didn't happen on the Crescent when I took it.
And this blew me away, and I loved the sort of phraseology. Everybody talks about like the freights, right? And there's sort of this argot that is limited to this world.
They call them the class ones, anyway. But
yeah, so you can really go deep on this. But you're right. This has created a very tense relationship. And going back to Richard Anderson, who's now running Amtrak, this is the main thing he's really got to figure out is this relationship, right?
Right. Because basically, people will take a train that's on time, and that's why the Northeast Corridor is very successful. Of course, there's a ton of people. It's very dense, densely populated area.
Right.
It's hard to get around on highways and all this stuff, but throughout the rest of the country, well, really, these routes, they go back like 100 years, the long-distance routes. The Crescent, pretty much goes back 100 years, and they were created at a time when America was a really different place. Of course, far fewer people, but also, say, on the Crescent, a city like Charlotte was kind of an afterthought. It was no big deal. The Crescent goes through there, in the middle of the night. That's the only time you can catch a train in Charlotte. Of course, today it's the headquarters of Bank of America. It's a big booming city, and it's kind of ridiculous that the Crescent's set up just end to end. You want to leave New York at a reasonable time, get into New Orleans at a certain time for dinner, of course, but But everything else along the way is sort of, I guess it's good to get into Atlanta in the morning, maybe get into D.C. around dinner time, but everything else is just kind of like stops on the way.
It speaks largely to kind of how we travel around America, right? We don't think twice. We just automatically get on a plane and go somewhere, even if it's a short hop. You go over to Europe and they're using trains so much more. And I do wonder if there's a way to kind of reorient our country so that the trains are more in demand and they can be better systems.
Well, Carol, that's what Richard Anderson wants to do. And, what he wants to do is Amtrak has a right of way, actually it has a right, well, I guess it is a right of way, but it is a right to operate trains on these freight tracks because the railroads agreed to that when, they turned over their passenger service to Amtrak, which is, to Amtrak, which was losing money in 2071. So what he wants to do is, instead of running trains that basically, go these long distances that would be much easier to fly and cheaper at this point, he wants to segment the routes. So for instance, there'll be more trains in between, say, Atlanta and Charlotte, these sort of urban centers that need service, or at Atlanta and Birmingham, or something like that. These corridors. And because the routes aren't as long, there won't be as many opportunities for delay. And also, hopefully, but for that to work, you have to work something out with the freight railroads.
Right.
So they're not delaying the trains. But it's these shorter routes between cities that are much bigger than they were in 1970, let alone 100 years ago when these routes were created. That's his vision. It's a really interesting idea.
Yeah. Well, and it does speak to something that is building maybe quietly right now, which is questions around sustainability and climate and carbon footprint and all these different things, and the way that we move around, less in cars and maybe less in planes, which takes us back to Richard Anderson in many ways. Very successsucul at Delta. Anyone who flew Delta during his tenure knows who he is because he was the guy, I'm Richard Anderson. Thanks for flying Delta. He would pop up on the screen.
This is a Delta champion.
Yeah, but,
Delta Diamond, right.
He was a guy who came in, the airline had gone bankrupt. He engineers the merger with Northwest and really puts Delta on a path where it is now to be a top airline. But he didn't make a lot of friends doing that. He's not making a lot of friends doing this.
Well, no, that's the thing. I mean, the unions are upset with him because of his cost cutting. And then you have these senators from the rural parts of the country, and they're worried about, if you change the long distance routes, their constituents are going to lose service. As paltry as it is in these sort of little stations. I don't want to say in the middle of nowhere, but they're not in big cities. But they're very important to a small group of people, and that makes them very important to these senators. And on top of that, you have people just love trains.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting to just kind of talk to some of those folks. But they feel really strongly about how Amtrak should be run, and they don't want to see things changed. And some of the things that Anderson's doing, like changing the service in the dining cars, and even suggested substituting bus service on part of the Southwest Chief.
Right.
That's, people just go berserk over that.
Right.
Well, and it's interesting, and I do wonder about the financials, right? It's still getting, $2 billion in subsidies from the U.S. government, right? It's still operating at a loss, and I do wonder what the financial viability of this is going forward.
Well, he's got a plan for that, too.
You better.
No, but his plan is, let's get Amtrak, profitable, or at least break even on an operating basis.
And he's gotten it better, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. He's, I guess the adjusted operating loss this year was $30 million. That's way down. Even last year it was $171 million.
Yeah.
So he's on track to break even next year in fiscal 2020. What he wants to do is take the money that they get every year from Congress and use that to fix up the system, which needs a lot of work. They're already getting new trains and doing things like that, but the idea is to show Congress that, look, we can run Amtrak, efficiently and profitably. Excuse me. So now let's do something about addressing the bigger problems. So that includes the Northeast Corridor, which needs $41 billion in sort of infrastructure repairs because the system's crumbling at Penn Station.
$41 billion.
Yeah.
No, but it's kind of interesting, and I do wonder whether or not he can make this work ultimately.
Well, that's the thing. It's the typical problem when you bring in somebody from the business world into a government agency. This is something that's happened at the Postal Service over the years too. But people say this thing needs to be run like a business, and let's get somebody, some successful corporate executive. So they bring them in, but these government agencies are not businesses. There's all sorts of red tape and constraints and all these different constituencies.
Public, it's weird. No, it is, right?
The government corporation is an oxymoron. Yeah. So the things he could do at Delta, and and despite the fact that they upset people, he could do them. And if he showed that they worked, people ultimately accepted them. But here, it's a much more complicated thing because, as he said, testifying on the Hill to people who were upset with him, senators like, look, you're my boss, So, but whatever the term is, having all those bosses, that's not something that a guy like Richard Anderson's used to. So I think he's trying to do his best. We'll see. We'll see if it works. But this is the first time. I think that's the first time Amtrak has had these sort of new ideas and this sort of innovation. Ever, certainly not in decades. And it's a really important system, and it needs to be changed. And, it's about time somebody with, some fresh ideas was in there.
That's Devin Leonard. And I always love Jason when he does a story because he actually took a train ride to get a feel of what it's like. He got to see the delays up front and personal, but he also talked to individuals why they choose trains over planes. And it just tells you about some of the successes and some of the failures that is Amtrak.
It's a great story and certainly worth reading at a time when everybody's traveling around the country. Well, that's going to wrap up the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week from Bloomberg Radio. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jason Kelly.
And I'm Carol Masser. Be sure to tune into Bloomberg Business Week Radio, live Monday through Friday, starting at 2 p.m. Wall Street time.
And if you can't catch us live, get our daily podcast. Check that out at Bloomberg.com or wherever you get your podcast.
And, of course, you can get this week's edition of the magazine. That is on newsstands now.
We'll be back right here next week at the same time.
This is Bloomberg.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
I love Black Friday. Busy shops, crazy people, average deals. It's so much fun.
Said no one ever. So be savvy and do Black Friday the easy way with Smarty. Grab a huge 100 gig data SIM for just £17 a month on the Mega Plan. And with no credit checks, speed restrictions or contracts tying you down, you can kick back with the best Black Friday deal around. Now that's Smarty. Search Smarty Mobile to find out more, but hurry, as this deal won't be around for long. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
It's hard to enjoy your daily yoga routine when your mind is on your next VAT return and how to avoid the usual mistakes. But with QuickBooks, the new VAT Smart Scan technology does the work for you. As the deadline approaches, it checks for duplicates, looks for anomalies, and reviews VAT codes. So your biggest struggle is touching your forehead with your ankle.
Search for QuickBooks. Perfect for making tax digital. QuickBooks. Backing you.
Going, gone.
Some things just don't hang around, like a great deal in Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Right now you can get the Samsung Galaxy S10 for just $29.99 a month. But this deal ends Sunday 1st of December. Catch it before it's gone. Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £35.99, now £29.99. Offer ends 1st of December. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Your old car, your loyal friend, so many memories. It's impossible to leave their side.
Until now, get £5,000 off a selected brand new Citroën when you trade in your old car.
Alors, out with the old, in with the new. Hello Citroën, hello comfort.
The Citroën Swappage. Trade in your old car for a brand new Citroën, including the award-winning SUV range.
Citroën.
Discount on OTR price of selected Citroëns excluding C1. Registered by the 31st of December when trading in a qualifying vehicle. Not in conjunction with other offers. Search Citroën Swappage for full T's and C's.
Got a big journey ahead for Thanksgiving with the family? Well, don't forget to take TuneIn along for the ride. With live 24-hour news from MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News Talk, you can catch up on the big stories and stay informed while you're on the road.
Other companies whose shares have hit all-time highs today include Jack Daniels maker Brown-Forman. Its shares started
Just try not to bring up politics at dinner. Trust us. Happy Thanksgiving from TuneIn.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Stabbing attacks, impeachment probe. I'm Ann Cates. 2 people have died after a suspect who was shot and killed by police went on a stabbing attack on London Bridge in what has been declared an act of terrorism. Metropolitan Police Assistant Commissioner Neil Basu says the perpetrator was wearing a fake bomb.
Due to reports that the suspect may have had an explosive device, specialist officers also attended the scene and wide cordons are in place to ensure there remains no further danger to the public. However, I can confirm at this time we believe a device that was strapped to the body of the suspect is a hoax explosive device.
Authorities in the Netherlands say 3 were injured in a stabbing on The Hague's main shopping street, and the search continues for the assailant. A court date has been set for early next year, linked to the impeachment inquiry.
January 3rd. That's when a 3-judge federal appeals court panel will hear oral arguments on the Justice Department's effort to prevent former White House counsel Don McGahn from testifying in the impeachment inquiry, arguing he has absolute immunity. A separate case involving the House's effort to obtain grand jury information and special counsel Robert Mueller's final report had already been scheduled for the same day. The Democratic-led House won both cases at the district court level, but is now trying to fend off Justice Department efforts to overturn those decisions. Lindy Kenyon, Washington.
More and more people are shopping online, but correspondent Jim Roop reports gift buyers still need to head to the mall.
There are deals you can't beat in-store, and there are deals you can't beat online, but Catherine Cullen with the National Retail Federation says it's clear that the in-store experience is still necessary.
They want to be able to touch and see items in person. You know, it's hard to buy that perfume or that sweater for someone without actually seeing it in person.
She says it seems to be no longer online versus in-store, but rather online and in-store, both being embraced.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed down 113 points. I'm Ann Cates.
I'm Dr. Jeff Gooden, and I treat pain with Salon Pas. That's because practicing good medicine is my responsibility as a doctor. For back or joint pain, I agree with CDC guidance that recommends using topical pain relievers first, like Salon Pas Patch Large. Salon Pas is powerful, FDA approved to relieve debilitating moderate pain, yet non-addictive and gentle on the body. Look for the green Salon Pas box in the pain relief aisle. Salon Pas. It's good medicine.
Sponsored by Hisamitsu.
Hey, have you heard that ransomware attacks have increased by 500% this year?
Yeah, cybercriminals are targeting all types of businesses, encrypting their data and holding it hostage unless they pay up.
What if we're their next victim?
Don't worry, we have Barracuda to detect, prevent, and recover from ransomware and other advanced threats.
So we're secured?
Absolutely. We'll pay no ransom and keep this business up and running.
That's a relief.
Protect your business at Barracuda.com. Barracuda, your journey secured.
Christmas trees are in big demand.
A study last January by the National Christmas Tree Association, which represents thousands of Christmas tree growers in the U.S., found a 20% increase in the purchase of real Christmas trees and a 12% increase in artificial tree purchases in 2018. The study found that Americans bought about 5.4 million more real Christmas trees and 2.5 million more artificial trees than they did in 2017. Researchers found that most of the new purchases were made by millennials, adults born between the early 1980s and the mid-1990s. I'm Christopher Cruz.
Thanksgiving Day has come and gone, but the holiday weather nightmare is not over just yet. As millions of travelers head back home over the weekend, rain and sometimes heavy snow will sweep through the Midwest tomorrow, then push into the Northeast on Sunday into Monday. I'm Ann Cates.
And I'm Nancy Lyons from the Bloomberg Newsroom. U.S. stocks all finished the shortened trading day lower. The Dow and the S&P both ended down 0.4%. The Nasdaq was down 0.5%. The dollar posted a 9th straight session of gains, the longest winning streak since January of 2016. It is the start of the holiday shopping season, and a survey from Deloitte shows 79% of respondents plan to go shopping over the 5-day holiday weekend, which is higher than last year. The estimated spending of $415 per household is similar to last year's pre-holiday estimate. The trend of brick and mortar losing ground to e-commerce is also expected to continue, with participants planning about 53% of their spending via online sources, 43% in stores. John Sylvia, the founder of Dynamic Economic Strategy, says the consumer is still a key driver of the U.S. economy.
Based upon employment growth, income gains,
consumer confidence, and the wealth component, which, again, for you folks, when you're looking at the equity market and other financial services, is remarkably strong.
Apple AirPods have fired up one of Asia's top stocks this year. Shares of China's Luxshare Precision have more than tripled in 2019. The company assembles the Apple devices, which take up 50% share of the market. Sales of AirPods are expected to double to 60 million this year. Luxshare stands to be the biggest beneficiary of that increase in production. This may be the only item that is not on sale this Black Friday. Christmas trees. Prices soared to a record last year. This year, they're likely to be higher. The average cost of a fresh tree in 2018 was $78. The head of the National Christmas Tree Association says supplies are tight and demand is rising. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Weekend, our global look at the top stories in the coming week from our Daybreak anchors all around the world. Straight ahead on the program, we look ahead to the November jobs report, plus the outlook for Cyber Monday shopping. I'm Bob Moon in New York.
I'm Nathan Hager in Washington, where the House committee that would draw up any articles of impeachment against President Trump is preparing its first hearing.
And I'm Caroline Hepker here in London, where we're looking at the NATO summit in the UK this week.
I'm Jessica Summers in New York, where we're discussing OPEC's big upcoming meeting and whether the producer group is likely to continue cutting oil output next year.
And in Asia, the different policy approaches from the monetary authorities in India and China. I'm Brian Curtis in Hong Kong with that story coming up.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good day to you. I'm Bob Moon. We begin today's program with the U.S. economy as the Department of Labor releases the November unemployment report in the coming week amid concerns about slowing growth. Let's get the preview now from Mike McKee, Bloomberg International Economics and Policy Correspondent. What about that slowing growth, Mr. McKee?
Well, we had some numbers this past week that suggested it may not be all that slow. There was some concern on the labor front over the past couple of weeks as initial jobless claims sort of spiked out of a range they'd been in since June. Then they went right back down into that range. And so they get distorted over the holiday season, but it doesn't seem to be that there's a canary in the coal mine saying things are going to get bad. We are expecting lower job growth because it's getting harder to find workers. We're well into the 11th year of the expansion, and companies say they can't find people right now. That should lead to higher wages and pressure on the Fed, but that's not happening either. We got the latest inflation numbers, the PCE numbers that the Fed follows, and no change there. So right now we're in sort of Goldilocks economy. They define Goldilocks differently from when you and I were younger. The economy grows at a much slower pace, but it's not really falling off, it appears.
Let's talk about that distortion that you mentioned. This has got to drive the statisticians and economists crazy right now because it is going to become increasingly more difficult to figure this out when you have the holiday hiring numbers.
Yeah, companies also seem to be hiring fewer workers in retail, and retail has had a very bad year. Most months losing jobs. The problem is, of course, we have too many stores. So we see far fewer retail employees hired, but we are seeing more warehouse and transportation people as we all, go online and click. So it'll be interesting to see the breakdown of that. And we don't have a lot of historical experience with that. We know that FedEx and UPS hire a bunch of drivers in December and lay them off in January. But if this is going to be a more permanent shift away from stores to the internet, have they hired a lot of those people, and do we need to hire fewer temporary people? And then does the layoff picture change as well? So we are going to have these distortions in the numbers that we'll have to figure out as we go into 2020 and then in future years.
I want to be sure I articulate this correctly here. This is going to keep the Fed fuzzed up for a while.
You're using those technical economic terms. The Fed is basically saying we've done enough. And they point to things like the housing market. Last week we saw good numbers on home sales, and they say, look, we've lowered rates, mortgage rates are down, and that's driving people into the markets. And that's what we can do. We can affect the interest rate sensitive sectors of the economy. So they're going to sit and wait. Also, Jay Powell has kind of made it clear in speeches he did again last Monday, where he said, we are going to try to let this run so that the expansion spreads into more areas of the economy. We can bring in the less educated. We can bring in minorities. We can bring in disabled people who in the past are marginally attached to the labor force. Now they're getting jobs because the job market is so hot. So even if inflation starts to rise a little, we've got some room, and why don't we just let it run? So I wouldn't expect much from the Fed. We were talking, some of us in the newsroom earlier, about what happens if the tight labor market drives up wages and we start to see inflation rise. I don't even think they are going to be considering raising rates, absent some surprise next year. What you may see is the conversation on Wall Street change, and instead of looking at our screens to see what the odds are of a rate cut, we might see people start to price in a rate increase. But probably 2020 at this point looks like the Fed is going to be on hold. And wouldn't it be nice not to have to talk about them all the time or tweet about them all the time?
Fast forward about 6 months. In your learned view, where do you see rates?
I think where they are for a couple of reasons. One is the economy seems to have settled into this groove. There doesn't seem to be any reason that we would see a change. Normally you would see a buildup of excess somewhere. Inventory is a little high, but we see that coming out of the trade problems. We don't see really any asset markets that are totally out of whack with valuations. There are some that are a little stretched, but you don't see the kind of things that are going to lead us into either recession or the economy just blowing up. And I don't think the economy is going to get a lot faster because it's an election year, and the Democrats control the House and the Republicans control the Senate, and who wants to give the other side credit? So I think, status quo during an election year in terms of stimulus, and status quo in terms of no recession. So the Fed doesn't really have to do anything. And then my big caveat is, of course, anything can happen. And economists never see a recession coming.
You're like those economists who always have another hand somewhere.
Yes.
Our thanks to Michael McKee, Bloomberg International Economics and Policy Correspondent. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Weekend, we look ahead to Cyber Monday as retailers push to lure holiday shoppers. I'm Bob Moon. This is Bloomberg.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills, the kind of skills that companies need to build real products, and the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. It was a short but not very sweet post-Thanksgiving session on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 113. The S&P 500 dropped 13. The Nasdaq Composite tumbled 40. Peloton Interactive jumped 9.5% to an all-time high. A key bank analyst says the company saw strong Black Friday traffic, which bodes well for Peloton's results in the current quarter. Walmart, Costco, and Target appear to be the big winners this Black Friday. Department stores, not so much, according to Customer Growth Partners. The retail research firm says shoppers are expected to spend about $32 billion today, about a quarter of that online. For the first time since records began in 1949, the U.S. was a net oil exporter in September. The government says the nation exported 89,000 barrels more per day than it imported. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
For the independent bookseller who found you that first edition.
For the baker who brings the smell of freshly baked bread to your door.
And for the barista who never needs to ask your name.
We've all got a part to play.
Every little tap keeps your high street alive.
And helps your communities thrive.
So if you love where you live, shop small.
Shopping on your local high street can make a big difference. Shop small. Only by American Express.
There is simply nothing else like it. Giraffe strut, birds swoop, gazelles leap. And as the music soars, the entire Serengeti comes to life around you. This is Disney's The Lion King. Experience it at London's Lyceum Theatre. Visit thelionking.co.uk.
At Lidl, we're big on getting in the Christmas spirit with our award-winning 8-year-old Queen Margot blended Scotch whisky for just $12.99 and our award-winning range of Hortus Artisan gins and gin liqueurs from only $9.99. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the new Audi A4 S-Line, which you can now have from £359 per month, £2,154 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre, but you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. With 48-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. Ordered by 31st of December 2019 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.uk.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Weekend, our global look ahead at the top stories for investors in the coming week. I'm Bob Moon in New York. Let's turn to the retail sector now. Online shopping is in focus as Cyber Monday approaches. Let's get a preview now with Poonam Goyal, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior U.S. Retail Analyst. Thank you for joining us. How important is Cyber Monday in the scheme of things this year?
It's very important. Online sales have been rising double digits all year, and that trend is continued to be expected for the holiday season, notably Cyber Monday, when the deals are usually the largest online. So for the holiday season, we're expecting a mid-teens growth rate online, and Cyber Monday should deliver above and beyond that.
And how does that compare to brick and mortar?
So brick and mortar sales could be down to up low single digits on average. If you think about the total holiday outlook, it calls for a mid-single digit increase, 4 to 6% across most industry estimates. And the bulk of that increase was driven by online. Online sales today represent 11% of total retail sales. So when you look at department stores and specialty apparel retailers, the number probably creeps up to about 25 to 30% on average. A meaningful contributor to total retail sales and really the driving force behind the growth that's expected over the holiday season.
Now, as more and more customers relate to online shopping, what do the promotions look like this year?
So the promotions aren't out for this year, but I can tell you based on what we saw last year, for example, Gap, 50% off everything. They had that in 2017. They had it in 2018. I wouldn't be surprised if that promotion isn't repeated again in 2019. And then you have American Eagle, where they really promoted sweaters last year, 50% off all sweaters, free shipping. We expect to see very similar deals to what we saw last year on Cyber Monday online. It's all about, getting the customer to go online and shop. And one important thing is free shipping, right? So a lot of retailers that have minimums on free shipping, they probably will go ahead again and waive those minimums to get customers into the door online.
Well, this is a sore point for me because how do they pay for free shipping? Do they just sort of hide it in the price, or what do they do?
I mean, they've been absorbing a lot of it, so that's why margins have been falling for retailers for quite some time. Part of that is promotionally driven. Part of that is just the fact that they have to absorb free shipping. And it's not really that the free shipping is expensive, it's the expedited free shipping that's expensive. So with retailers offering, trying to follow Amazon with a 2-day, the 1-day, even same day, that's what gets expensive. But if you think Cyber Monday, you still have time to Christmas, so they're not going to be pressing the pedal that hard on 2-day or same day. That said, a lot of them will be advertising focused, which is buy online, pick up in store. So they'll aggressively push that to get the customer to shop online, but then come in the store and pick up those items.
Our thanks to Poonam Goyal, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior U.S. Retail Analyst. And let's head to the commodity space for the week ahead now. For that, we bring in Bloomberg's Jessica Summers.
Bob, OPEC and its allies will meet in Vienna to decide whether to extend supply cuts into next year. These producers pump about half of the world's oil and had agreed earlier this year to cut production by 1.2 million barrels a day to keep markets balanced. Bloomberg's Europe oil market and OPEC reporter Grant Smith joins me from London to discuss what we can expect from the key meeting. Great to have you join, Grant.
Hi, thanks, Jessica.
Okay, Grant, so what we all want to know here, is it likely that OPEC and its allies make deeper oil output cuts, or will producers decide to continue with their current agreement and just stick to the production targets already in place? And either way, how long would a potential extension to the agreement even last?
So, about a month ago, OPEC was signaling it was getting ready to cut deeper. Perhaps you had the top officials in the group saying things like that they would do whatever it takes to keep markets supported next year, that all options were on the table. And everybody felt because there was so much crude around and such a surplus expected for the first half of 2020 that they would, in fact, cut production further. That all seems to have changed in the past few weeks, and we've had officials and delegates saying that there is no plan in motion right now for a deeper cut, that it would simply be too hard, and that they're also a little bit more hopeful that the market is going to be better than they'd feared next year. So it looks as if at this point that we'll get an extension over the current cuts. Those at the moment run out in March. Several delegates have said that they would all be willing to push them to at least the middle of next year. But you have some others who say that they could go on for even longer, perhaps into the third quarter of 2020 or the end of next year, just so they can be sure that they've done all that they need to do to keep markets in balance next year.
Interesting. So in terms of the current agreement, how has compliance been? And what do you expect from the key producers like Saudi Arabia and Russia moving forward if the group does extend the cuts?
Overall compliance has been very strong. They promised, as you said, to cut by 1.2 million barrels a day. In actual fact, it's been about 50% more than that. But it's also been quite mixed. That extra compliance has largely come about because Saudi Arabia, the group's biggest producer, has cut about twice as much as it promised to do. With others in the group, it's been a little bit more mixed. You have, for example, countries like Iraq and Nigeria, which have done almost none of the cutting that they promised. With Russia, the biggest non-OPEC member in this coalition, they've done maybe about 80% of what they'd promised, but they also seem to be finding different excuses to not fully meet their commitments. For example, they were saying recently that they have some new production that shouldn't be categorized within the overall agreement.
So I see Saudi Arabia leading the group there in terms of cuts. And what about the political turmoil that's essentially hit OPEC-producing nations like Iraq, Iran, Libya, Algeria, and Venezuela? What are analysts expecting to see next year in terms of potential unexpected supply shortages? And does this mean that effectively we will see OPEC limit their output even further?
The situation in some of these countries has been getting a lot worse as we head to the meeting. In particular, Iran and Iraq seem to have seen an upsurge in political unrest. All of the countries you mentioned there have a history of production problems, and analysts have said that we could see losses or further losses in some of those next year. And that's kind of what's happened throughout the OPEC agreement since it started, that they have cut as they promised, but a lot of the surplus has been taken care of by losses that have been beyond their control, that haven't been planned. And certainly countries like Venezuela, which is producing the least in decades, or say Iran, which has been hurt very badly by U.S. sanctions, have the potential to see further losses next year, which could end up being what helps balance the market.
Grant, thanks very much for joining me. This is one of the topics we're watching in commodities for the week ahead. In New York, I'm Jessica Summers. Bob?
Thanks, Jessica. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Weekend, we head to our Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington for a look at the agenda in our nation's capital. I'm Bob Moon. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seizechange.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
Did you really get those trainers half price?
Yeah, nice, right? From Zalando. They have new deals every day for Cyber Week.
This is an express service to a whole week of cyber deals, calling out footwear, sportswear, winter looks, designer styles, and more.
Cyber Week at Zalando. Save up to 70% on your favorite styles. Zalando. Free to be.
Your old car, your loyal friend, so many memories. It's impossible to leave their side.
Until now, get £5,000 off a selected brand new Citroën when you trade in your old car.
Alors, out with the old, in with the new. Hello Citroën, hello comfort.
The Citroën Swappage. Trade in your old car for a brand new Citroën, including the award-winning SUV range.
Citroën.
Discount on OTR price of selected Citroëns excluding C1. Registered by the 31st of December when trading in a qualifying vehicle. Not in conjunction with other offers. Search Citroën Swappage for full T's and C's.
NFL fans, the action continues this weekend on TuneIn Premium.
Thrown down the middle, caught, touchdown over the shoulder, back in the end zone, Snead. Wow!
This Sunday, TuneIn has every NFL football game starting with the Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern. And closing out Sunday night with the Patriots at the Houston Texans at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Breaks a tackle at the 5 and scoots into the end zone for the touchdown.
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Drive into the in-laws' house for Thanksgiving? Having a long airport layover on your way home? Or maybe you're camping out on Black Friday in quest of the deal of the season. Whatever the case, ease the pain and make it a long weekend to remember with TuneIn. And for those based in the turkey at home, we've got great cooking podcasts for prepping the perfect turkey.
I have water with unflavored powdered gelatin, bun pan.
At home or on the move, soundtrack your Thanksgiving with TuneIn.
In the stock market and in life, everything can change from 1 minute to the next. Be the first to hear the latest money news and market trends with CNBC on TuneIn. Wherever your day takes you, listen to CNBC's full slate of programming, including shows like Fast Money, Squawk Box, and Mad Money with Jim Cramer. And when the next big business story breaks, CNBC lets you know with live updates and commentary. At the office, at home, or on the go. Search CNBC on TuneIn to listen.
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line. Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
2 people have been stabbed and killed in a terrorist attack on London Bridge by a suspect who was shot dead by authorities. Metropolitan Police Commissioner Cressida Dick says security in the area has been tightened.
In the coming days, you will see more police, both armed and unarmed, patrolling our streets to help reassure those who are understandably concerned.
In the Netherlands, 3 people were wounded by a suspect during a knife attack in The Hague. The House Judiciary Committee will hold a hearing on the impeachment probe. Correspondent Caitlin Collins reports White House officials may reject having their attorney appear.
They didn't think it was going to be in their favor if they did, because, of course, sending White House counsel would also come with stipulations about whether or not they send those other witnesses that so far have not gone forward.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 113 points, the S&P 500 down 13, the Nasdaq off 40. I'm Ann Cates.
And I'm Nancy Lyons from the Bloomberg Newsroom. U.S. stocks dropped from record highs. The S&P, Nasdaq, and Dow Jones Industrial Average all finished lower on this shortened trading day. Overall volume was about 30% below the 30-day average. Treasuries were mixed. The dollar posted a 9th straight session of gains, the longest winning streak since January of 2016. It's make-or-break time for America's retailers. Black Friday kicks off the traditional holiday shopping season. For a department store like Macy's or Kohl's, a third or more of annual revenue is captured in the fourth quarter. Stacy Widlitz is the president of SW Retail Advisors and says retailers need to be smarter to attract customers into stores.
Retailers are making it so easy to go online, and then you can pick up your product a few days later in stores if you feel like it, rather than having it delivered. And guess what? That's a win-win for the consumer and also for the retailer.
While shoppers in the U.S. line up for Black Friday discounts, in France, dozens of anti-capitalist and environmental activists staged sit-ins outside Amazon's French headquarters northwest of Paris. Protesters blame the online giant for the introduction of Black Friday in France. They say it's a push for consumerism that contributes to hurting the planet. Mercedes-Benz parent Daimler plans to cut thousands of jobs worldwide by the end of 2022. The company's personnel chief tells Bloomberg more than 10,000 positions are likely to be eliminated. Daimler is trying to revive profit margins that have been squeezed by heavy investments in electric and self-drive vehicles. UBS is joining Credit Suisse in changing how it targets the lowest ranks of the rich. The Swiss bank plans to offer scaled-back services to a broader group of wealthy clients. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons. This is Bloomberg.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Radio Plus app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
I'm Bob Moon in New York with your global look ahead at the top stories for investors in the coming week. Up later in our program, we'll head to Asia, where some key manufacturing data in China and a central bank decision in India top the agenda. But first, let's head to our Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington to see what items in politics and government are set to top the agenda in the coming week. And for that, we bring in Bloomberg Daybreak anchor Nathan Hager.
Well, Bob, after weeks of closed-door and public testimony in the House Intelligence Committee, the impeachment focus shifts to the panel that would draw up any articles of impeachment against President Trump, the House Judiciary Committee. Lawmakers there plan to call legal experts in their first public hearing on Wednesday. Democrat Madeline Dean explains why.
It's important that we hear the constitutional case for impeachment. What did the framers actually
robustly argue for in terms of the process and what rises to the level of a high crime or misdemeanor.
For more, let's bring in Bloomberg Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter. Obviously, this will be a very big week in Washington. What else are we expecting from this first judiciary impeachment hearing?
Absolutely. We're kind of shifting gears here from, hearing testimony in the intelligence panel about who did what in terms of Ukraine to sort of more focus specifically on impeachment and how the impeachment process itself would work. And that's going to be happening, though, in concert with the expectation that the intelligence panel will be sending over a formal report to the Judiciary Committee with some recommendations. So that could come very early in the week and something that we will all be very closely watching for as this kind of next phase gets underway.
So then, are we expecting to hear from any more witnesses like the ones who testified before the Intelligence Committee? Could they be called back, or is that just over at this point?
It's certainly a possibility. Chairmen on Capitol Hill typically don't like to rule out, anything that's within their purview of power to do. It's also important to remember that Adam Schiff, the chairman of the intelligence panel, has also said that he is not necessarily done with his portion of the investigation and hasn't ruled out the possibility of calling additional witnesses on that side. Now, there are still a number of people who have been talked about as being very key figures in the question of what went on in terms of U.S. policy with Ukraine during the pivotal period that in question. Folks like John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. And so certainly whether it's in the intelligence panel or the judiciary panel, those are people that I think would be at the top of the list to watch for in terms of whether or not Congress is going to hear from them in some capacity.
Now, of course, the White House had been blocking those top-level witnesses in particular from complying with subpoenas. Those are still tied up in the courts, aren't they?
They are for sure, and that's one of the reasons why I think Democrats haven't pushed ahead with really trying to pursue legal means to compel people to testify here, because I think the concern is that could take quite a long time, and Democrats are sensitive to the idea that they also don't want this to get too close to the presidential election, because there's a concern about a potential backlash towards Democrats that could come out of this.
Now, you mentioned House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff. There had been some calls among Republicans for him to testify. What else could we expect from Republicans as they try to counter the Democrat strategy in this next phase?
Well, I think we're likely to continue to hear Republicans kind of press on the process argument. The indications seem to be that they think they're winning this, at least in terms of the court of public opinion, in terms of characterizing the impeachment inquiry itself as being both illegitimate and biased from the outset against Trump. And so I would expect those types of arguments to continue. I also would expect Republicans to, as it moves into the Judiciary Committee, reprise the types of arguments they had in the impeachment panel about, potentially feeling as though they're not getting their share of being able to question witnesses, that sort of thing, although the rules will work differently in the Judiciary panel. But I think that, we are likely to continue to hear them complain about the process itself and characterize it as, an illegitimate, and using Trump's words, political witch hunt against the president.
Now, the process is different, though, in the Judiciary Committee than it has been in the Intelligence Committee, right? Can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, so one of the things, I think in the Judiciary panel, because that is the panel that does traditionally have oversight of impeachment, there's going to be more power for the Republican members and their staffs to, question witnesses. And they obviously were able to do that in the public hearings, but I think there's going to be even more of that potentially as they move into the Judiciary panel.
More history to be made in the nation's capital. Kate, thanks as always. That's Bloomberg Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter. And that's what's happening in the nation's capital. I'm Nathan Hager. Catch more of our political coverage weekdays on Bloomberg Balance of Power. It airs noon to 2 Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio. Bob?
Nathan Hager reporting from our Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington. Thank you, Nathan. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Weekend, NATO leaders are set to meet in London at a difficult time for the alliance. We'll have a preview next. I'm Bob Moon. This is Bloomberg.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. It was a short but not very sweet post-Thanksgiving session on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 113. The S&P 500 dropped 13. The Nasdaq Composite tumbled 40. Peloton Interactive jumped 9.5% to an all-time high. A key bank analyst says the company saw strong Black Friday traffic, which bodes well for Peloton's results in the current quarter. Walmart, Costco, and Target appear to be the big winners this Black Friday. Department stores, not so much, according to Customer Growth Partners. The retail research firm says shoppers are expected to spend about $32 billion today, about a quarter of that online. For the first time since records began in 1949, the U.S. was a net oil exporter in September. The government says the nation exported 89,000 barrels more per day than it imported. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
The deals. What is the plan that Boris Johnson says he's going to have?
The courts.
Are they really constitutionally barred from doing it?
The leaders.
When you served on the National Security Council staff, is this something people model?
It's all part of Balance of Power with David Weston.
How bad an attack was this on the global economy? How badly were we hurt?
Weekdays at noon Eastern.
There are delivery challenges with pipelines and things.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
What's going on with the German economy?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SCI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's change.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. Now the news.
2 people have been stabbed and killed in a terrorist attack on London Bridge by a suspect who was shot dead by authorities. Metropolitan Police Commissioner Cressida Dick says security in the area has been tightened.
In the coming days, you will see more police, both armed and unarmed, patrolling our streets to help reassure those who are understandably concerned.
In the Netherlands, 3 people were wounded by a suspect during a knife attack in The Hague. The House Judiciary Committee will hold a hearing on the impeachment probe. Correspondent Caitlin Collins reports White House officials may reject having their attorney appear.
They didn't think it was going to be in their favor if they did, because, of course, sending White House counsel would also come with stipulations about whether or not they send those other witnesses that so far have not gone forward.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 113 points. The S&P 500 down 13. The Nasdaq off 40. I'm Ann Cates.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Weekend, our global look ahead at the top stories for investors in the coming week. I'm Bob Moon in New York. Coming up, we'll head to Asia, where key manufacturing data in China and a central bank decision in India top the agenda. But first, let's head to Europe, where NATO leaders are meeting near London this week at a challenging time for the future of the alliance amid tension between some of its members. For more, let's head to London, where Bloomberg Daybreak Europe anchors Caroline Hepker and Roger Hearing are standing by.
Bob, NATO has lasted 70 years, but what is its future? Members Turkey and the United States are at odds over the use of a Russian air defense system, with the threat of sanctions looming. At the same time, the French president says the alliance is brain dead. All of that is in addition to the usual sparring over spending targets. President Trump's visit to the UK at the same time also injects him into the centre of an unpredictable election campaign here. So for more on what may happen, Bloomberg's Roger Hearing and I are joined by Maria Tadeo in Brussels. Great to speak to you, Maria. So what are the main things up for discussion then at this summit?
Well, there's a number of issues happening here. This is the 70th anniversary, which you would think is something to celebrate. The fact that this is one of the strongest, long-lasting military alliances that we've kind of ever seen in modern history. But we do see situations that are creating tension and 3 major disruptions happening from 3 different points. So on the one hand, you have Donald Trump, who has questioned NATO in a number of ways. He has said that essentially the U.S. is paying to protect countries that are rich and themselves should be contributing more to this and spending more to protect themselves. And perhaps you could get to a point where the U.S. decides we're not going to pay more, we're not going to increase our contribution into NATO. Then you also have Turkey. Of course, Erdogan made headlines when he made that incursion into northern Syria. That created a big disruption within NATO itself. And now, of course, this is story about him using or testing that Russian military equipment, which NATO does not want to do. And finally, we have Emmanuel Macron, who also made a lot of headlines here in Europe when he said, from my point of view, I'm not sure if Article 5, which essentially would see every member of NATO protecting a single member state if it's attacked, well, I'm not sure if it stands. And I think at this point, when you look at the strategy, NATO is almost suffering from brain death, and there is no coordination in the actions that we take. So there's those 3 points that should come to play when they meet in London.
Well, Maria, let me pick up on the S-400 issue, because I think it's quite complicated. Just
Just take us in what the problem is with it, what the issue is between Ankara and Washington.
Well, there are a number of issues here, and this is a deal that is reportedly worth $2.5 billion between Russia and Turkey, which is buying this equipment that comes and is obviously made by Russians. And on the one hand, you have NATO saying it makes no sense for a NATO country to use Russian equipment. If you go back in history, the reason why NATO was created was to essentially protect Europe, not just Europe, but mostly Eastern European countries from Russia. So why are we using this equipment, which, by the way, is also incompatible with NATO systems? Adding to the problems here is the fact that Washington has taken this almost as a bilateral issue. They feel that Erdogan is trying to play this both ways. He wants to do deals with Russia, but also Washington, use American equipment, use Russian equipment. That could perhaps mean that the Russians could get an insight into how some of the American military is used, how some of the U.S. made equipment is used, and also operations within NATO. So they feel this is entirely a no-go. And there could be many repercussions for Erdogan from sanctions, which the U.S. could do, and in fact, it essentially could do it quickly. There is already legislation put in place for that. You could also see perhaps NATO calling into question whether Turkey should be part of NATO or not going forward. But if you listen to the comments that have come out of the White House and President Trump, they are very tough. But when they see each other face to face, Erdogan and Trump has almost always refrained from making a quick decision on sanctions. And he said, look, a lot of the issues are not really Erdogan's fault. This is Obama and the administration back there, which was a disaster. That is, of course, his point of view. But it's still a question mark as to just how far Trump wants to go. Because, again, the language on the surface of it is pretty strong, but when the two have interacted one-on-one, Trump has almost taken a step back from making any immediate decisions.
Look, President Trump and the Trump White House has sort of seriously impacted a number of these multinational agreements and organizations. You think from the Paris climate change to the WTO and now NATO. Do you think, Maria, that there's a growing feeling amongst the NATO allies that actually the organization, despite its sort of raison d'etre, actually lacks purpose?
So when you speak to officials at NATO, they tell you that they actually feel it's very efficient, and all the actions that they take as NATO, not as individual countries, are actually they work and they're efficient, and they do see value for money. And of course, you can go into should we spend more, should countries spend more differently, or put more financial contributions? That is a fair point, but they do not question the fact that NATO is a good thing, that it works, and it's actually delivered on many fronts. The question mark perhaps from the European side is whether they should have a bigger role within NATO or whether they should actually create their own alternative to NATO. And this is perhaps something that Emmanuel Macron was floating himself when he said we should be much more assertive and actually have a strategy of our own to protect themselves and not depend on anyone else. That is in big contrast to Angela Merkel, who really sees NATO as just so key for not just the protection of Europe, but almost the world order. When you look at President Trump, it's always a wild card, and the fact is he does think that in some ways it is obsolete, but also it's the fact that the U.S. should not be paying for countries that are Western countries and are rich to protect themselves. So is it obsolete? I think it depends on who you ask, but when you speak to NATO officials, they still believe this is something that really works, and it works well.
Maria Tadeo, thank you so much for joining us. Great to speak to you. I'm Caroline Hepker here in London.
I'm Roger Hearing, and you can catch us every weekday morning here for Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, beginning at 6 a.m. in London and 1 a.m. on Wall Street. Bob.
Thanks, Caroline and Roger. Now let's head to Asia, where December kicks off with some of the last central bank decisions and major data points for a year marked by trade tensions, civil unrest, and a dovish turn in monetary policy. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis is standing by with more.
Bob, this week we get to compare and contrast the different sorts of monetary policy that are being approached by India and China. Now, the Indian central bank has been very aggressive, one of the more aggressive central banks that we've seen of late, and we could see another rate cut. On the other hand, the PBOC has been conducting a more limited approach or targeted approach, and that's even with a lot of weakness in the economy. We'll get key manufacturing manufacturing data that will be at the beginning of the week. I've invited Bloomberg's chief Asia economics correspondent, Enda Curran, to join me for some discussion. So, Enda, pretty interesting week shaping up. We might see a 6th consecutive cut for the RBI. Pretty aggressive, right?
They have been among the most aggressive emerging market central banks to ease, Brian. Like you mentioned, that window that all of these emerging economies got to lower borrowing costs came this year when the Fed shifted, of course, and that's why the RBI got in on the act. They have problems in the shadow banking sector still. They've got significant bad debt situation there. Consumption remains under pressure. So logically, it might point towards an economy that needs support, but they also have to keep an eye on food prices. Remember, food inflation there has an outsized size in the overall CPI basket. So it's a balancing act for the RBI. Do they cut now, seeing the backdrop of slowing world growth and, of course, pressure in the banking system, or do they hang on for fear of inflation running away?
How well has it been working?
I think it's been, well, by all accounts, they have slowed. The economy has slowed. It wasn't until recently the world's fastest growing major economy. They've slipped back a little bit, but nonetheless, there's no sign of outright crisis there. The government's fiscal targets are under pressure, as I mentioned, but I think they're probably hoping for an economic dividend from the rest of the world too. They're hanging out for a pickup in world growth, signs there of stabilization, hanging out for maybe some kind of a dividend from the China-US trade deal if that's agreed. And of course, they would probably hope for a little more Fed easing perhaps through into early 2020, because that would give them, extend their window to offer monetary support for India's economy too.
Okay, before we get to the PBOC approach, which has been different, let's talk a little bit about the data that's coming in China, the PMIs. If you look at the industrial profits report, which was pretty weak, we're probably expecting to see some soft PMIs as well.
The numbers across the manufacturing sector in China are still weak. There's no real sign of a bottoming there. In the global PMI side of things, we have had some stabilization. I know the private Caixin index has shown some signs of stabilization, but broadly speaking, factory profits remain under pressure. They're stuck in deflationary territory. That will hurt the cost of servicing debt for companies. It will hurt their profitability. So when you're in that kind of a cycle for your manufacturing sector, it's not great. And if you look for external demand to lift them out of a hole, you're not seeing a great pickup in world trade either. South Korean exports remain soft. So the broad story on the manufacturing and PMI side of things remains that China's economy is under pressure and there's no sign yet of a bottoming.
Enda, thank you very much. That's Bloomberg's chief Asia economics correspondent, Enda Curran, joining us for a look at the contrast between the Indian approach and the Chinese approach. I'm Brian Curtis in Hong Kong, along with Doug Krisner. You can catch us every weekday here for Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, beginning at 7 a.m. in Hong Kong and 6 p.m. on Wall Street. Bob?
Thank you, Brian. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Daybreak Weekend. Join us again Monday at 5 a.m. Wall Street time for the latest on markets overseas and the news you need to start your day. I'm Bob Moon. This is Bloomberg.
180 over 111, and I had a stroke. I couldn't speak or walk.
This is high blood pressure. Get back on your plan. Go to loweryourhbp.org.